Good morning and welcome back. If you could take your seats, we will be getting started. Please do come in, find a seat, and rejoin us today. This has been an amazing morning. I so appreciated Fatih Birol, Brian Motherway, the IEA team putting this together, as well as the excellent presentations by the ministers. So with great thanks to all of you for joining us today. I'm Jennifer Lakey. I'm the Executive Director of the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy. And I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to be with you to introduce our important conversation today, which will pick up on one of the themes that our ministers spoke about so eloquently in helping to deliver, to define, and to build the economy of the future. So this high-level panel will focus on how business leadership on energy efficiency can contribute to those goals. So first, let me introduce the esteemed panel that will be speaking today and ask them to come on stage to take their seats. First, we have Kelly Becker, who's the President of North America Operations for Schneider Electric. Kelly holds a bachelor's degree in advertising and public relations. She has been leading Schneider Electric's global North American operations and is a member of the Global Executive Committee of Schneider Electric, overseeing an integrated multi-billion-euro region, enabling electrification, digitalization, and automation across data centers, buildings, homes, infrastructure, and industry. She has a long list of accomplishments, but please join me in welcoming Kelly to the stage. Joining us on stage next, we will have Brandon Spencer, who's the president of the Motion Business Area and member of the Group Executive Committee of ABB Limited. Brandon holds a bachelor's degree in economics and MBA and has more than 30 years of experience in industrial technology sector. And he's a member of the Executive Committee, president of ABB Motion, and one of the 3 global business areas of ABB. He leads the multi-billion-dollar business operating in over 100 companies. Brendan, please join us on stage. Next, we have Christian Strand. Christian is the Climate Solutions President for Danfoss. Christian has a deep experience in the cooling and refrigeration, compressor and heating industries, along with 36 years of diverse experience in varied industries and countries. He is an engineer and provides solutions that increase machine productivity, reduce emissions, lower energy consumption, and enable electrification. Danfoss is a leader around the world, and I'm delighted to welcome him to the stage. Christian. And now I would invite Anil Rawal from IntellliSmart, who's the Managing Director and CEO, to join us on stage. Mr. Anil Rawal is the Managing Director and a former Indian bureaucrat who has transitioned through his MBA programs and other important academic experiences with 27 years of leadership as well as bringing experience in corporate other organizations. He's been actively involved in the evolution of the public-private partnership frameworks in India for power projects. Under his leadership, India has been digitalizing its power sector and informing how the distribution systems can contribute to a more efficient Indian economy. Please join me in welcoming him. So thank you all for joining us. I want to offer a few quick framing remarks as we move into the conversation with our esteemed panel. Today, we heard a very compelling set of statistics and information about the policy imperative we face. The policy imperative that can be met by business investment, business engagement, and opportunities that business has to strengthen supply chains, improve security, build for the resilient, affordable energy system of the future. The operations of these industries that are on stage, and many of you in the room, have a profound impact on the direction of that future. And through technology, through recognition of the moment that we are in our economy where reinvestment in energy efficiency is paramount, we will have a conversation today about the actions that we can take to build that forward. My organization is a nonprofit research and policy organization that brings in practical solutions to lower bills, reduce energy waste, and build a more equitable system, themes that I know we will be hearing throughout our conversation. So managing for external heat and weather events, thinking about economic demand growth, and the digital economy are all in our speakers' portfolios. In managing for their operations, we have an opportunity today to discuss where and how investments take shape within the companies to enable them to meet those challenges that we spoke of. We know that investment, that partnership with the energy sector, that governance and the market rules that establish the opportunity for providing goods and services, equipment, and solutions is essential. So as we think about ways to build the response from energy to energy external events, we have an opportunity to examine the supply chains, the operational efficiency, and the products and services that these leaders are offering, and to hear from them on the journey ahead. So, with that, we'll now begin our discussion, and I'm thrilled to have the opportunity again to welcome Kelly. Kelly, companies like Schneider Electric are leading on energy efficiency, and you do that not only within your operations, but you shape the customer behavior, and your activities can transform the markets to scale. I'm interested if you could pick up on that theme and tell us a little bit more about how you make those things come to life within Schneider.
Sure. So I think we're well known. It's deep within our DNA as a company around energy efficiency and sustainability. We've been doing it ourselves, which is where we really start from. In order for us to advise customers, we're obviously testing all the technologies in our own factories and our facilities to figure out what works, what doesn't work, what's going to be the most effective to ultimately helping customers. We've been doing this for the better part of a decade. It's evident in our facilities. We have double-digit number of World Economic Forum lighthouse factories that really show how we use electrification and automation to ultimately digitalize for our customers. We're absolutely still focused on sustainability as a topic as a company. We've been named the world's most sustainable company just last week again for the third year in a row by Time Magazine. So we live this deeply inside of us. Our employees all, for the most part, have a piece of their compensation that are tied to sustainability and energy efficiency because it's so deeply ingrained in the company and who we are. This obviously then ultimately translates into our customers and all of the different platforms that we have, which I think we're going to talk about certainly further in this discussion. And then what you'll also see us talk about a lot is ourselves, our customers, but then ultimately our supply chain. So we've had a project called the Zero Carbon Project for the last number of years, which original mission was to get 50% of our supply chain to reduce their own emissions. We're glad that in the last 3 years we've actually gotten to 56% for the top 1,000 suppliers that we use within our own operations. And so now we're expanding it to an additional 500 suppliers. So it's really about every day getting the entirety of the company to wake up and think about efficiency, think about sustainability. How do we do that for ourselves? But then ultimately, how do we drive it through with our customers and our suppliers?
Thank you. And we are going to come back to some of those themes, but thank you so much. Brandon, tell us about how ABB embeds energy efficiency as a strategic priority, not just as a question that is part of the portfolio, but integrated, and how that long-term strategic priority drives operations and the design of technologies and solutions that can scale.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's great to be on stage with other companies that really walk the walk. I think that's probably one of the most important aspects. I mean, you know, for us, we're in our planning cycle right now, our long-term planning cycle right now, and the sustainability side, the efficiency side, all that's part of the organic plan that we build. So it's not an or part of the equation, it's an and part of the equation. So it's a fundamental of our business. In the U.S., we just opened up a factory, $100 million facility in Wisconsin, geothermal for the cooling and heating side, highest efficiency motors, drives, et cetera. That facility will use 45% less energy than if we had built it in a traditional manner. We didn't do that so it's a commercial. We did it because there's a business case to doing it. And I think that's what's really important, is that we walk the walk. We show why it matters for us. We, of course, invite customers and partners and policymakers and everyone to that facility to see what we're doing. But we do that in the other countries around the world where it's also tougher or could even be more relaxed. So in India and China, these facilities, zero water or water reclamation, zero waste landfill, all these sort of things. So kind of the sustainability efficiency piece is super important for us. And I think the big message from our side is that we do it because there's a business case to it. Of course, it's better, but we do it because there's a business case. And so I think that's why it's part of our long-term plan. That's why it's built into our financials, into our scorecards and all these sort of things, is because it makes business sense and it makes sense for the world that we live in.
So important, that fundamental driver of the embeddedness into your strategy. Christian, this gets to this next question for you, which is around that corporate strategy and culture, and how the lessons that you've learned along the way could be beneficial for other companies who are looking to do the same thing, to begin to build for that embedded strategic vision and culture.
Yeah, thanks for having us here. So, we sell a lot of products into heating and cooling solutions, and all these products have one denominator, that is energy efficiency. So that is the whole, you could say, value proposition about our components. So how we drive it through the company is that we set some very high strategic target for being carbon neutral by 2030 in all our operations. And here we are talking more than 110 factories and more than 100 countries where we operate. So that we are doing. Then we have the net zero target by 2050. I know some of you have exactly the same, so we are driving that there. And when we do this energy efficiency as the major driver in doing all this, right? So we use a formula where we say we reduce, then we reuse, and then we resource the energy. And of course, we deploy a lot of our own things when we do this, a lot of our own building controls and compressors and heat recovery solutions and so on. And just to give one example also, what Brandon just mentioned, our Norbold campus, where we have 250,000 square meters and 3,500 people working, became CO2 neutral in 2022. And the payback time of everything we did to make that was less than 3 years. So I can just confirm that it is actually very good business to do so. So it's really part of everything we do, and we take it one step further. Also, as Kelly was saying, we also go to suppliers. We call it Green Ask. So we work with our suppliers to make sure that we also get them to be part of the journey. And we go with our customers. We have around the globe 4 application development centers where we, together with our customers, develop solutions to show how our components going into a solution landscape can reduce the energy consumption. So that is how we really try to drive it. So we live it every day. It's part of our value proposition.
Thank you. Anil, tell us about how this connects to the digital economy, your work and thinking about digital solution, using data-driven insights to help customers accelerate the immediate efficiency gains. I loved the 3-year payback or the 3-year break even for those investments. And how do you strengthen the longer-term energy resiliency that efficiency and upgraded digital technologies can deliver?
Sure. Thank you. First of all, thanks for having me in this prestigious conference. And it's been about 3rd year I've been coming. Every year context has been very, very important. And this time we are talking about energy efficiency and resilience. So what I see about energy efficiency is beyond consumers' behaviors and how do you do better with every unit of electricity and power. So in current context, I think there are 3 conflicting forces which would define energy efficiency. To my mind, first would be energy transition, which is extremely critical and has been critical on account of global climate changes. Second, more important now, is energy security. Recent events and ton of events across globe have already put everybody at risk of energy security. Either you are involved or not involved, it's not material. You are still impacted in a big way. So energy security has suddenly become extremely critical topic. And third, emerging out of these two is grid resilience, whether this energy transition, which is really big and large and critical, and energy security can be managed by this grid. See, to my mind, consumer behavior by saving certain units is one thing which we should always do, but how many millions of units are being lost because they are not being dispatched, because grid is not resilient? Across the globe, there are negative energy charges. More you consume, more you are being paid in certain countries. Even in India, I have seen in same day, per unit charges could be zero. You know, why? Because there's power, but nobody can consume it. Grid is not resilient. I think this is new definition of energy efficiency. What IntelliSmart has been doing exactly this. This trilemma, the intersection of these three forces of energy transition, energy security, and grid resilience make the energy efficiency. What IntelliSmart has been doing over the last few years is working with government to really make the utilities more resilient, grid more resilient, make them more efficient, and that's what our work has been on the digitalization part. So we are working with distribution utilities to really strengthen their networks and provide smart meters at the ground level, which are no touch, no kind of intervention instruments, and provide lots of data in understanding the consumer behavior as well as the grid structures. That would lead us to be more efficient in consuming every unit we generate. You know, this power is no deficit. There's lots of solar power, lots of wind power. How well we consume and use in the grid is the extremely sensitive part. That's what IntelliSmart has been doing along with governments in India.
Thank you. Well, I'm really pleased that we've picked up on so many of the themes that were discussed in the opening session. And I want to open the panel portion of this. Thank you for those opening comments. But I want to first pose a question that I believe all of you should be able to help us understand better in this moment. How can business, government, and financial institutions work together to more effectively accelerate that energy efficiency progress that we are all seeking, both in terms of the short-term actions and the long-term security that we know we have to build for, right, this longer-term vision. As we think about that, I'd love to have you think specifically about how your company is positioning that question, this partnership structure that will enable the unlock for energy efficiency to be embedded in the economy of the future. So let me see if we'll start over here with Kelly. Kelly, do you want to take a crack at that?
You know, when I first got into this industry 25 years ago, I think companies were pretty closed off, right? What you made was what you made, and that's what you sold into the market. And I think what most of us have realized over the last decade is the scale of the challenges is pretty immense from an energy perspective and from the grid and everything we're trying to add onto the grid. And so what we're finding is that this component around partnerships, it's not enough to do M&A anymore and buy somebody. You have to drive partnerships throughout the whole of the industry, because I think a lot of us have figured out we need a whole lot of big brains working on all of the challenges, but frankly, all the opportunities that we also have. And so we're definitely approaching it from that perspective by saying through venture funds and which, you know, a decade ago we wouldn't have sort of been set up that way, but we've gone down that path certainly, and we're doing a lot of partnerships, and most large companies in our space now are along those same lines, because we need a whole lot of minds to solve the challenges that we're all looking to fix, quite frankly.
Partnerships is absolutely a critical part of that. And let me just offer Brandon an opportunity to think about that.
Look, I think I agree fully, and I think the technology, you know, I'm an optimist for sure, and I think the technology can play a key role, and I think that's where the partnerships can really have an impact. So I mean, something we always say in ABB is the greenest unit of energy is the one you never consume. That's not we don't have to debate that topic. That's not political, it's just a fact. And so how can we make energy efficiency as important, as urgent, as relevant as everybody wants to talk about new generation? Because you meet with customers and you meet with policymakers, and it's all about we need more generation, we need more generation. If you take the US, for example, the utilization rate of the grid is around 65%, 70%. So if you kind of make a parallel of an interstate system, the interstate can handle a lot more cars. It's just, where is the power? Is it in the right places? And so what we're working with our customers on is really trying to deploy technology to try and help solve some of these challenges. So grid stabilization, we're doing that for data center customers. We're working with a geothermal company, Fervo Energy, that just went public in the last few weeks, and they're deploying our technology for baseload geothermal. So most efficient baseload, no emissions, and feeding into data centers. So, cool examples like that where I think the companies on stage, ABB, the technology's there. That's the thing that I think is kind of most frustrating to me on this topic, is that we don't have to wait for capacity of factories that are being built. We don't have to wait for new technology to be created. We have it. The majority of motors that we sell in the world are still middle-level efficiency motors, because that's what is being asked for, and the competition, capital intensity, all these sort of things. But 45% of the electricity in the world goes through an electric motor. In industry, 60+% of electricity goes through an electric motor. If you want to solve efficiency, solve the challenge with electric motors. Get more efficient motors, put drives on motors. 1 out of 5 motors that could use a drive has a drive on it. So there's all kinds of stats out there that's very real, very now. The companies here have the answers, and we just have to work together with what you said, of the companies that are trying to get off the ground for technology, with policymakers, et cetera, to have an impact, because it's just frustrating that we're walking past power that's there. And, if you can put 10% of energy back on the grid, let's do that. That's the cheapest way to do it, the fastest way to do it. You need no permits. You need no policy induction. The CEO of Hydro-Quebec was a great example. Her passion was clear around how she feels on energy efficiency. And you need leaders like that to take a stand and really dictate that this is how it's going to go. And we're ready.
I think it's so important to connect the pieces at the system level efficiency with the individual components or
Yep.
actions that you can take at that product level. And so that span is really an important part of what we need to do in this reimagining and build forward for the energy efficiency movement. So let me ask Christian, how would you think the partnerships then come to life? What is it that we do to make these partnerships, and perhaps an example from Danfoss?
Yeah, I definitely agree with my two colleagues here that we need the partnerships to speed up things. Speed is important, and also to bring in the technologies, and then we need to scale. Our challenge with energy efficiency is that we have all these examples around, we don't have the big scale, right? So we need to be able to scale this together. And then a little bit, Brandon mentioned now the motors. I would say in general to the policymakers, please put requirements out there, right? And do it long term. Don't like on off. We can take building codes, and we can take minimum energy efficiency standard for data centers and other things. Then we will come with the technology. And if we get scaling the technology, I think we can all agree that we can provide it at the cost that it's affordable. So it's not going to be more expensive. But it's a little bit the chicken and the egg, right? So we really, really need to have this. And we have seen it in Europe, where the Commission is actually coming out with, I would say, relatively good building standards, but then it has to be rectified by each member state, and then it starts to go in all directions. And then people, they start to, be careful to invest, and then we are not getting there, right? Or heat pumps, when we deploy a lot of heat pumps, what is the energy requirement? So put it high, we can deliver it, and then we're going to do it. And I think we can give an example for Denmark, and we can take the municipality in southern Denmark, Sønderborg, where we back in 2002 sat down all the companies and the municipality and agreed that we want to have it net zero in 2029. So we started to work towards that, and we are well on the way. We will achieve carbon neutrality in this municipality, and we're talking about 80,000 people, but kind of a bit of land mass as well. And we haven't, let's say, had a dip in our living standard. We haven't had a lot of increased costs, but we have just step by step improved where it makes sense, and it's actually been good business. So that's an example, but that again, close partnership and a long-term vision that we don't change. Everybody commit, and then we stay on course. I think that's really, really what is needed if we want to drive this.
The long-term market signals, very
Yes.
important. Anil, you mentioned something in your comments about your partnership with the government of India. Perhaps you could share us a little bit more with how that's been working.
Sure. So as I said, along with the consumption behavior and consumers' behavior, as well as energy efficiency is concerned, and machines and motors, I think what more is required is what we are losing at the system level, which is unprecedented. Why? Because there are too many stakeholders in the energy value chain. Start from generator to transmission to distribution companies to TSOs to the battery guys to the SCADAs. So many players, traders, regulators. So actually, there's so much of data in the system, which is not really speaking to each other, and that's why I refer to the systemic losses which we are making in the system, along with small gains which we have to make through various other measures. What we have to do is to bring these stakeholders and the data together, and data is the solution. Unless you really digitalize and gather this data at one place and make it symmetric and accessible. Accessibility of data is a problem. Democratization of data is a big problem in energy systems everywhere. At least in India, we are doing this at big scale. There's a new initiative by Government of India, which is called India Energy Stack. This stack is actually collating all the data at digital public interface as kind of a platform where all data is available to all stakeholders, which can actually plug into the system through a user ID. So it is just like giving access to everybody, all the data. The biggest problem across the globe in energy efficiency is, more than anything, accessibility of data to use the energy. That is the biggest gap which needs to be filled. Why I'm repeatedly saying so is because in every 7 minutes, sun is throwing as much energy as required for the whole globe for the whole year. We are talking about saving energy. We have to use this energy efficiently. Gap is in system being up to mark in exchanging data and information. This can be done only by better digitalization, and India has taken a massive lead in this on this structure where, as I said, they are making India Energy Stack, where anybody can plug in and access the data and use it efficiently. So this seamless flow of data in terms of energy coin is very important across the value chain to make it more efficient. So that's what I think we are working with Government of India to deliver. Yeah.
Jennifer, can I give a good example? I mean, I think sometimes it's easy to sit on the panel and talk about things that are wrong, but it's also usually helpful to talk about good things and things that are working well. If I take India, electrifying the rail system. So ABB is a Swiss company. India is electrifying the same amount of track that exists in Switzerland every year. In terms of moving their transit and rail system to all electrical. And so they've taken it as a government initiative, they've pushed it out to the country, they've adopted it, and now they're electrifying all the infrastructure. The US has less than 1% of rail that's electrified. And so I get distances and heavy haul and all these sort of topics. I get all that. But the point is, if there's a commitment to it at the policymaker level, the companies will come with the solutions that are competitive to make the industry move. And I think it's a great example in India of driving efficiency and electrifying industry.
I also think data isn't the problem. We've got loads of data, right? Every piece of equipment any of us make is off-putting data all day long. And I think it's actually about democratizing the data and helping customers along the way make better decisions with the data, or even having visibility into the data, which is where certainly a lot of us are spending time around software, and how do we help everybody from a homeowner up to the railways and everybody in between actually understand, what do I do with this data, and most importantly, what are the decisions I'm making? Because I think energy efficiency comes down to, yes, using less overall, but we're still going to use some, dependent on whether it's in your own home or it's charging your electric vehicle or it's running Hydro-Quebec. We're using energy, and so we have to make it easier for everybody to make an informed decision, and that's where simplification, ease of visibility, using software, driving open environments that are able to pull off all the different pieces and devices that all of our three companies make, but actually put it into an infrastructure that somebody can understand, what do I do with this now? It's critical to actually driving the energy efficiency topic, is to give people the information to make a decision.
I want to pick up on that, and I think it is a really important part. Christian, I'm wondering if you want to jump in here about the tools, because you spoke to this visibility around the carbon targets and goals, and those long-term challenges that you're seeing that Danfoss is contributing to as well. How do you help the rest of the companies in the community understand where those tools and the strategies are that will enable that vision, which I think both Brandon and Kelly spoke about so eloquently?
It's a lot about awareness and about training. So, and about how do you contribute in this journey, right? Because you have a lot of different, you have the private households, you have the companies, you have the shop owners. So simply making a kind of idea catalog for each of them, what could be the different measures, right? They're the easy ones, that lighting, and there's the one where you can put a drive on a motor, and there's insulation. There's a lot of other things that you then go through. If you have to change this, then do this. And then by these steps, creating that awareness. So that has been the journey. And that's also why we have been successful, because it's been a target set, but then it's taken the time to go there. So it's not a sudden investment, but over time. And whenever you do these decisions, then you think, what is the most energy efficient way to do this? And of course, looking also at the cost benefit of it.
Mm-hmm. Kelly, you mentioned this unlock that data and visualization can provide. How have you helped other organizations take advantage of what you've learned about how to take forward those types of tools and implement them in their businesses?
I've been lucky enough within Schneider to work and lead in 5 different countries, and I can tell you that the problems are the same. It's just a matter of, I think Kristen was talking about scale and how do you actually drive. We've been working with Vancouver International Airport, so when you talk about critical infrastructure and ensuring it stays up and running, and this is a customer who had very disparate systems because they bought something from me at one point, and they probably bought something from Brandon, and they bought something from Christian, and then they look at the entire infrastructure and go, but how does this all talk and speak? And so we've really moved to helping them drive software layers that can pull information out of all of these sort of disparate systems and give them those insights. And I think we're seeing that in sort of every type of customer is actually getting that visibility, using software to help you look at that, and then using analytics to help you make decisions in real time, which is certainly where the industry is going.
This speaks to the power sector and what you're seeing with IntellliSmart and the work that you're doing, Anil. What is the data platform interface, and how does it also help to think about other things like the resiliency in particular?
Sure. So data, starting from the availability of energy in the grid on one side, and consumption at different levels in view of the variability of energy being input due to renewables and consumption on ground. Just balancing these 3 things is extremely critical. And when there are multiple utilities working on the same grid, at the end of the day, there's only one grid which actually is supplying to different utilities, and there is variability of energy being pumped into the system. So this data, if available from different stakeholders in terms of consumers as well as in terms of generation, it can be balanced out. It will actually allow lots of energy to be utilized better, to be same unit being delivered more efficiently to the consumers, and hence avoiding losses on the grid. This actually also means lots of systemic efficiency improvements on the utilities side, because those are the neglected areas in many parts of the globe, because they are not best at energy efficiency and systemic efficiency improvements. They don't invest back onto the grid. Because they don't invest back onto the grid, again they are mismanaging the grid and again making heavy losses. That is what example has emerged in India, because a few years back people will recall that India was losing about 30% of energy from the point of generation to the point of delivery to the consumers, which has now got down to about 15%. That itself means millions and millions of units. So why I'm just trying to bringing something which is more kind of macro and more kind of wider is this, that let's use this transition or this energy or the green energy in a manner that people can be saved of this kind of changes which happen globally and get impact. Every individual on the ground gets impacted. How do we really deliver this energy more efficiently on ground, and how do we reduce these losses in the system by connecting various dots which are actually separated significantly due to lack of information? So that's why I said having platforms which actually seamlessly make information accessible and make it more democratically available would actually help the system do better and make them more efficient. So that's the way I think forward for the whole globe, I would think, not only India. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that there's a workforce and training element in there as well around data and information and how people access and utilize that in their day-to-day decision making. So I want to ask a question, and Kelly, you had mentioned the theme of resiliency as well, and sort of how that long-term resiliency plays out for the system. And perhaps we could have each of you speak to the moment that we're in of efficiency and resiliency, because there's certainly a lot of economic resiliency. There's also system-level resiliency that we're needing to embed into the way we think about efficiency as part of the solution. So why don't I actually just ask each of the panelists to respond to this question of efficiency and resiliency, and how do we actually build for that in the next 1 to 3 years?
So I just recently moved back to North America from living in the UK for a number of years, and we had a really interesting challenge there because so many of the buildings are listed. So grade 2 listed buildings, which means you can't change a lot of the facade. You have to work with what you have. And at Royal Botanic Kew Gardens, which is a British institution, if you will, we spent a lot of time talking to them about energy efficiency and ultimately resiliency. You're talking about Victorian-era buildings that couldn't go down, right? Rare plant species that have come off islands around the world that are extinct anywhere else. And so lots and lots of conversations about where is that broad line between driving to energy efficiency, using less, as I think a lot of the panelists have been talking about, but ultimately resiliency and ensuring how do we use backup power to ensure that we sort of wouldn't lose these priceless artifacts, if you will. And I came away from that experience realizing if you can look at buildings from the 1850s, you can look at buildings from, I don't know, the 1990s, and absolutely find a path forward. And so I think it's more about thinking through the end-to-end of what needs to be accomplished in a building or a facility, and ultimately, what are those steps? How do you make some incremental steps along the way, which is really what we did to work alongside them. Make some changes, test how things were going, make the next set of changes. And there's nothing wrong with being thoughtful in your approach to both energy efficiency and ultimately ensuring the resiliency that's there.
Yeah, maybe two things. One, I don't think there's any trade-off between efficiency and resiliency. You don't have to give up on one to get the other. These systems can be extremely resilient now. If we have examples with customers where they've replaced old stuff and their energy bills come down 30%, and so that's either margin or it's competitiveness. That yields to resiliency. And so I don't think you have to trade one for the other. And so maybe that's the first comment. The second comment, I think, to make it long-term, to make it sustaining, we have to continue to work on educating. I give a personal anecdote that my mom, I live in Houston, my mom's in Houston, and she's 80 years old, and she called me, and she had been in contact with a company. She added a battery storage system for the power side to her house. They guarantee her a lower rate on her utility bill, and then they take the excess power and put it on the grid when she's not using it. And so, if my 80-year-old mother can get educated on this topic and can make her own self and her own lifestyle and everything more efficient, more resilient, then I think there's no reason that we can't do it and our companies can't do it together. And so I really challenge us to be practical about what we can do, what we can deploy together using technology as the lever to really have an impact on this short term and long term. And I think it's good for all of us.
Yeah, I very much agree with Brandon. I don't think it's a trade-off. I actually think it goes hand in hand. What we have seen with many customers is what started as a decarbonization journey, using energy efficiency as a lever, has now also turned into looking at resilience, especially in the countries, and the Commissioner Jørgensen mentioned it this morning, where suddenly you have to import fossil fuels, right, and you're dependent on it. So I think it's actually just adding to the benefit of doing energy efficiency that you can build more resilient solutions because you are less and less dependent on imported things. So that's how I look at it, right? I see it as actually as a part of the package.
That sense of agency and security,
Yeah.
theme of the day. Yes.
Yeah, so I think there's no dispute on the topic that efficiency, to my mind, resilience is a bigger macro parameter. Energy efficiency becomes subset of that if you are not resilient to handle energy inflows. Any amount of efforts at the ground level would not be helpful. I would think, as I said, the world has changed. I recall my early days of life when I was being told that you put off the fan if you're not sitting in the room, put off the light if you're not in the room. That's fine, that is to be done. That's respect for the nature and respect for the resources. To my mind, the concept has changed in the sense that when we were doing these things, it was all fossil fuel. Today, energy is free. Again, I want to impress upon this topic. Energy generation is free. It's on us, how much cost it takes us to deliver the energy to the people. So let's work on this. As I said, 7 minutes are enough for the sun to deliver you as much energy as you want. But how efficiently you deliver to the consumer is your topic. So I would think grid has to be, again, very resilient, and all other consumer behaviors and patterns and science and everything would be required. But there's something mother requirements, and that's on the handling what we have, what nature has given us to use more efficiently and not wastely splurge it because we don't have the efficient systems to deliver. My point would still remain that unless you be resilient, make grid more resilient, don't waste energy because it can't be delivered because grid is not allowing to handle the variability is really not good. We have to handle variability. We have to understand that sun and wind are enough for us to use all the energy we need on earth for years and years. So let's be strong on that front, and rest all would fall in line.
Maybe, Jennifer, if I could just jump in. Think about a data center. I would actually claim, and you can challenge that, but we can actually use a data center to make the energy grid more resilient. Because if we use the technologies that we have today, and we do shave off the peaks, and we do load sharing, and we do it energy efficient and so on, and it can actually be flexible, maybe 0.5% of the time, then you actually have a big component sitting in your energy system that can actually contribute to it, and by that making it a more resilient system. So I think you can also turn it that way around, right? And you can see it with other solutions as well. So I think you should think about it in that context.
I think that is an excellent point, and what you've all highlighted is that, in fact, our energy system is our industrial system today. It is our homes with a battery wall. It is our data centers with excess heat, with the opportunity to think of themselves in a very different capacity, a nodal system, which we're optimizing for delivery. And I think that's a very impressive vision. And then the question is, what can we do in the next 1 to 3 years to get us on that track? Well, clearly policy is an important part of that, and building markets that will be durable, that will create those signals, and where there is compensation for the services that are provided by those different actions. But what are in the 1 to 3 year time frame, how do we help businesses like yours become nodes of that energy system of the future that we're building today? And let's see if let's start with you, Christian, if you want to pick up with where you left off.
Yeah, but I think back to one of the points I mentioned earlier. I think the regulatory piece, right? So the building codes and minimum efficiency standards that we need to get in place. Then I think if we also want to have more financial backing to really start to scale this, then we need to have some standard energy performance contracts as well, so we can draw the investors also to this industry. A lot of investors, they go for energy supply side, but they don't come to the energy efficiency side, so we can't get the scaling there. And then we talked about the digitalization and the AI and the smart demand response and predictive AI and so on, how we get that in as well. We have a lot of solutions today, right? So, but how do we actually get that integrated? And there's of course something with practical with protocols and so on, but then there's also who owns the data and who gives the data to whom, which is also a big thing when we work on this. And then I think we need public procurement to drive this, right? They really need to step up and put these requirements in whenever we have these things, so they start to drive. So back to the point before, we start to get the scale, then we also make it affordable, then we make it competitive. So that would be my wish, if I can come up with that.
That's a good list for 1 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Let's see, Brandon, how about for you?
Yeah, one simple thing. Take an inventory of where you're at and then build a plan to advance it. Whether that's your personal life, the factories that you operate, if you're in our space, the facilities that you run, if you're on the consumer side or on the generation side or anything else. Take an inventory where you're at. You can't change something you don't measure. And so take an inventory and then build a plan and fix it. It's not more complicated than that. And so I really challenge you to take one actionable step. And in 1 to 3 years, you can have a significant impact. You can reduce your expenses. You can increase your margin. You choose.
I think great advice. Anil, do you have a 1 to 3 year?
Yes, so I think it is clear, first of all, policy formulation according to the current needs, thinking energy transition and energy security both in place is very, very important. Then I would think partnerships among various stakeholders. As I said, this is a fractured segment. Energy is not a one segment. It's made of multiple continents coming together. Continents, I meant to the stakeholders. Partnerships are very important to exchange the data and information. And then I would think if you have policy in place, the partnership in place, then it's the platforms which are extremely critical. How do you exchange this information, make symmetry of things so that we can use these resources more efficiently? That's what my take would be for next 1 to 3 years. Yeah. And I want to really say a lot of thanks to the platforms like IEA. In the current fractured world, it's very difficult to sustain such highly respected I think associations and platforms. IEA is doing extremely good job in connecting these dots together, like today's event. Yeah.
Kelly, you started us off on this question.
I agree with everything my fellow panelists would say. I would also just say everybody in this room is interested in this topic, so it's sort of like all of us looking at each other in a mirror. And I would take what Brandon said a bit of a step further that says, what can you do in your environment and your community to help people actually understand what we're even talking about? I tend to use electric vehicles as a really good example because it's something that most consumers understand or have been thinking about. Do I buy one? Do I not? What does that look like? And it's a topic that people can understand. When we start talking about grid modernization, I think the average person is maybe not that interested. And so what can each of us do to help spread the mission and the conversation? Because if there's anything that we're seeing, I think, the climate is asking us to help spread our messages and to understand and to talk about that. It's pretty clear based on what we're seeing. And so I would say, what can you as an individual do to help us all move forward, not just in your capacity as a company or as a CEO, but as your capacity as a citizen and part of a community?
I think we've hit on a number of themes that really demonstrate what leadership means. And at this moment, this panel has focused on where you're seeing leadership emerge from within your own company and the operations and the products and services you provide, and where the individual and the community can take action. I want to just close us off with this thought, which is that in fact we are redesigning the system. We are bringing efficiency central to that system. And when we've spoken about that partnership structure that we need with policymakers, with institutions that are going to be making those decisions in the 1 to 3 years, each of your companies has a really critical role to play in bringing forward those examples of leadership and how that emerges. So I want to just note that we've spoken about the data, the tools that are needed to be able to help decision makers. We've spoken about the need for standards and codes that bring the viability of the products that we already know exist, those motors, the drives, the compressors. We know that these technologies are there, and yet there isn't access to know what does that deliver to our new energy system, and how does those efficiency investments deliver the resiliency, deliver the longer-term performance, the ability to interact digitally with the energy system. And so in my closing, I just wanted to say that this 1 to 3 year vision is critical, and that the actions that we take as companies, as individuals, and within our communities to engage policymakers and the governance of the energy system with this vision this is the moment to redefine and rebuild those types of partnerships and approaches. So with great thanks and admiration for all that you are doing on leadership and business for energy efficiency, please join me in thanking our panel. We're going to pause for one quick photo, and then we'll invite up the next panel for a continuation on the conversation with regards to the strategic nature and competitiveness around energy efficiency going forward globally. So please.
Yep.
Thank you.